Good morning, everyone. We're here on the Magothy River, on board with Maguire Marine, building a reef. We'll be live streaming for a while. Just gonna let you all see what's happening as we get some folks coming in. There's Brian Shoemaker, Mr. Reef Ball himself, the Carroll County STEM coordinator. Brian has helped us found this program in 2014. And has been a rock ever since, building lots of reef balls. Many of which you see here were built by Carroll County fourth graders through their program, again, where the Living Reef Action Campaign started. We also have some from Broadneck High School, right over behind me, actually. And then also volunteers from the Annapolis Public Libraries, the Bush Library, and we're building Noah's Reef. So in October of 2021, we started building reef balls with we had a big event with the Cape St. Clair community to build some reef balls in honor of Noah. And out here, we're putting it in the water. So thank you for joining, and I'm just going to continue to see what we're doing out here. You can comment, and we can see them, both on Facebook and YouTube. So feel free to ask questions, and we'll give you some more information here shortly. There's Bella. Thank you to Nick Garrett from Sonar Kings. He's making sure we know exactly where we are and we're placing the reef balls in the proper place using his Humminbird side scan sonar. There's Nick's boat. We've got well-known photographer Jay Fleming out here capturing everything. Stacy Roth, teacher at Broadneck, helped organize an all-female crew that helped load this barge. High schoolers that were doing some service hours yesterday and the day before. Of course, we couldn't do this without the Magothy River Association. Magothy River Association keeps an eye on this amazing, beautiful river. We are just here off of Dobbins Island, and then Little Dobbins Island. There is Gibson Island in the distance, and Chesapeake Bay itself is right out there. So Mike Maguire Marine is donating his services and his crew, their expertise. They build marine projects all throughout the region. And they're expertly placing these on the bottom in a perfect grid. You may have seen some pictures that their crew did in 2021. The last time we were out here, they deployed 112 reef balls at the site right next door. We've been waiting for the permit to be approved by the various government agencies, and that has happened. We're out here to work. We have a 400 by 800 foot section of reef here. You can see the size of a reef ball. We're going to have plenty of reef built over the years, working in partnerships. There's Brian.
William Winchester is on the feed. They want to say hi, so I want to give a shout out to William Winchester, who just said hello. The fifth graders who built an amazing reef project last year. Your reef balls are on here. If you can zoom in, maybe on a couple we etched. I know there's a mechanics building right there. Oop.
There's one that said, what's that one say? There's Mechanicsville.
On here today. So today's deployment is roughly 175 reef balls. You can tell from Mr. Sikorsky's viewpoint, there's a lot out here.
Absolutely. Yeah, we also have a couple bigger ones. That's a bigger one. That was also built in Carroll County. It's a mini bay size. The majority of these are called low profile. And over here are some smaller ones. So these were actually built by Eagle Scouts. We've loaned out the equipment to them over time and allowed them to build what's called an oyster reef ball, and then low profile, and then the size is a mini bay. Mini bay is what our the tech center in Carroll County, the Career and Tech Center, builds with us repeatedly. Big shout out to Mike Campanelli and his team of students there.
Westminster Elementary is watching as well. Good morning, Pandas.
So these reef balls will naturally get covered in various organisms that we call fouling organisms, barnacles, mussels, maybe some oysters. There are some spat on shell. There is some spat on shell deployed here on top of our last reef. And so what these reef balls can do is their surface is habitat for different animals. Oysters are extremely important in the Chesapeake Bay, but in the Magothy River, there are less oysters because of the salinity. And so they don't reproduce here as well as they do in more saline parts of the bay. But there's lots of different animals, especially mussels that filter a lot of water and help provide food and habitat for lots of different fish. It won't be long till we're sharing you a video of these underwater once we've had some growth. And anybody that likes to go fishing, well, this is going to be a great perch fishing spot for sure.
Two things, Dave. Cranberry Station.
How you doing, Cranberry Station?
Cranberry Station's here. And first question is how heavy the reef balls are. Obviously, they differ in size, but I'll let you field that one.
Yeah, so this is an oyster one. You can see me picking it up with one hand there, I think. That's probably about 90 to 100 pounds. We build them a little heavier than some because they're mobile and we move them a lot, right? So we're going out to schools, building these, placing them on trailers, putting them at a place like Cypress Marine where all these have been stored. So we build them a little bit thicker than the normal spec. They're probably about 225 pounds for this size. And this one's probably about 325. You can see this one in particular, the bottom of this reef ball is nice and thick, where this one's hollow. And so depending on who's building it and their experience, they vary a little bit. The professionals at the Reef Ball Foundation and Reef Innovations build these down in Florida, and theirs are absolutely perfect. But all things in nature are different, and the different shapes and sizes of these reef balls bring the diversity we need out here in the Magothy River to improve the environment.
So next question came in, how long does it take to build the reef? And so this is a process. So if you want to explain the 100 that are there, the 175 going in today, and then the future plans.
Sure. So the 100 that went in before were from previous projects, definitely some from Carroll County. But what Brian will do with the elementary schools is go out and build somewhere between 15 and 20. We do the same thing in Calvert County. We'll actually be starting next week there in Calvert County. And so 15 to 20 at a time will be built and then put together at a storage location. In this case, we've been waiting for the permit. And so the permit delay allowed us to continue to stockpile these here in this region. We also have some stockpiled on the eastern shore, planning for deployments in the Choptank River and Janes Island. And so ultimately, we just continue to put the pieces of the puzzle together and look for opportunities to work with great partners like Maguire Marine, Magothy River Association. We have Jesse Eileth from the Severn River Association here. How you doing, Jesse?
Hello.
Another great champion for our local waters. We have Chris from the Bay Paddle over there. So lots of great folks coming together, doing this work. But again, it does take some time to get everything together, and it's a little bit variable each and every time. Much of what we do is permitted by the state of Maryland through the Maryland Artificial Reef Initiative. That's slightly different than this case where the Magothy River Association applied for the permit. But with the Maryland Artificial Reef Initiative, CCA works closely with the team at Maryland DNR to place the reefs on permitted sites throughout the bay. And all of these provide different kinds of habitat, depending where they are. We have a number of reef balls in the St. Mary's River, southern tip of the western shore of Maryland. And that's with the St. Mary's River Watershed Association right by St. Mary's College. Those reef balls are covered in oysters, both that are set with spat from a hatchery, but also just naturally because the St. Mary's River has a large abundance of adult oysters, which can spawn and reproduce right there in the river.
Dave, can you get a shot of some of these that have an oyster shell? Because that's a signature for a well-built reef ball.
There you go.
A bunch here that we
The blue ribbon.
Stamp of approval to.
There you go. And so just in nature, we want oyster shell out there. We want oyster reefs because the spat, the baby oysters will attach to this. But the limestone that's in concrete is very similar chemically to an oyster shell. So naturally, the animals are attracted to the calcium and can attach to these reef balls. The little nooks and crannies, you can see all the little pebbles. This is actually pea gravel, small pea gravel. Makes it nice and easy to mix the concrete for the younger students. They mix them in teams and big trays. And it's a mix of sand, water, pebbles, or aggregate. In this case, like I said, pea gravel, and then limestone. The limestone is part of the Portland cement, which is produced by Lehigh Cement. They are in Carroll County. and are big supporters of this program, donating the Portland cement we need to build these with these students. We work with different partners in each part of the state. And we're very excited to be working with CCA Virginia and having a reef ball build on the James River in central Virginia in a town called Scottsville with the Boys and Girls Clubs there in early April. So in Maryland and Virginia, anywhere in the Bay watershed, we want to work with you and do our best to have the capacity to support all the schools, nonprofits, and other partners. We do not charge schools a penny. We are here to support their meaningful watershed educational experiences. There we have Kathy Kerbo from the Reef Ball Foundation. Hey, Kathy. Folks, check out reefball.org. Look at the work they do around the globe. We couldn't do this without their great partnership. In fact, last year they donated the molds for the oyster-sized reef balls. Oh, there we go. There's a team at one of the elementary schools. So those smaller oyster-sized reef balls couldn't have been done without the Reef Ball Foundation, Campbell Foundation, and other partners coming together to bring us a third set of reef balls to put on the road. So these larger ones, again, this mini bay size, these are built in a tech centers, really not a mobile program. We collect them when it's time to put them in the bay. This size has also been deployed in partnership with DNR at Rocky Gap State Park, Blair's Valley Lake, and Cunningham Falls. And so they put these for freshwater habitat as well. You know, they can be used all over the place, all over the world, like I mentioned.
Another question, how long will they last and what are the oldest living reef balls? And I know it's a fairly new thing, and
yeah.
If you want, I'll let you field.
Sure, yeah, so I would encourage you to go to reefball.org and look at a lot of the information they have, follow them on social media. Their founder, Todd Barber, has recently created a map that you can look around the globe and see what they've done. I do not know the exact stats on the oldest reef ball, but I know you can find that online, and Kathy can probably help out if she's still listening in. But ultimately, we mix these in a way so that they can live in a marine environment. There's additives that go into them to strengthen them and make sure that they can live. But ultimately, concrete will last, you know, it depends on the salinity as to how it breaks down. It depends on current. It depends on a lot of different factors. But I can confidently say that all of these will outlive us. And that's what we want. We want to pass on healthy habitats in the Chesapeake Bay. And ultimately, even if let's say this oyster or this reef ball is covered in oysters, first of all, this rough surface is important. We spray sugar water on here to react with the concrete and make it a rough surface. It helps it from attaching or sticking to the fiberglass mold. But ultimately, all these little nooks and crannies are places that these small animals can attach and then grow. And so there's plenty of videos on our website and online of actual underwater reefs. You'll see how well they colonize. And just remember how diverse our environments are across the globe. These are used to grow coral in places where coral exists. Actually restore coral. They have some great programs and studies they're doing right now. And then up here in the Chesapeake where we don't have coral, we have the mighty oyster reef, and that's what we're recreating. I would say that this is over 100 years of what it would take nature to grow vertically if we just left an oyster reef alone. You know, with the status of our estuary and our water quality, oysters cannot succeed as well as they used to. That said, some populations are increasing in portions of the bay, and that's great news. And work like this will just help have habitat or hard substrate for all these different animals to attach, oysters and others.
Dave, I don't want to turn half day too educational, but the Bay report card recently came out, and oysters were still in F, but there was progress. Oyster populations are on the increase,
yep.
So it's going to take a lot of time. So that's good news and bad news all in one.
Yeah, and like any report card, it's a matter of who's grading. Students, you know that. Be good to your teachers and work hard. But we all want the Bay's scores to improve without a doubt. And as I mentioned, the oysters are increasing in population in certain areas, specifically Tangier Sound and some of the lower areas. There's also really three pieces to oysters. There's the wild harvest, there is restoration, and then there's aquaculture. And so there's kind of three legs to that stool, and restoration is being done in multiple sanctuaries throughout the Bay watershed. 10 different tributaries are being restored by 2025 in Maryland and Virginia. And then wild harvest is allowed in each state, Maryland, Virginia, with different regulatory controls. And there is a stock assessment in Maryland, which continues to improve and better forecast our understanding of what's out there in nature. There's lots of other regulatory things that are always being discussed through DNR and the Oyster Advisory Commission. So if folks are interested in that, definitely check out those meetings. They happen monthly. I'm honored to serve on behalf of recreational anglers and CCA on the Oyster Advisory Commission, and we advise DNR on various measures they can take related to oyster management. And again, it's a complex thing with a long history. Another thing that impacts oysters is disease. There are diseases that they have, and we are seeing some natural oysters surviving the diseases, which is a great thing. We know that if they can genetically be strong and not die from these diseases, we're going to have a healthy oyster population well into the future. Things like sediment will cover up an oyster reef. That's why reef balls are so important, the three-dimensionality. There's also studies that show that if an oyster filters a certain amount of water per day, you'll hear things like 50 gallons or 30 to 80 gallons. It could be 0 gallons on certain days, and it could be more on others. Just like us, they'll eat based on conditions. Throughout the year, they have different portions of their life cycle, and so they're going to eat different amounts of algae each year and filter different amounts of water, each day throughout the year. But ultimately, if you add on a lot of the other animals that attach to an oyster reef, you get about another 50% of filtration capability on that reef. And that's why undisturbed reefs like these are so important to the ecosystem. And there needs to be that balance of wild harvest, restoration, and aquaculture for the Chesapeake Bay to win. So there's Marcus out on the barge, Mike Maguire. And what they're doing is using that side scan sonar, and you'll see some images later, to make sure that we're putting these in the right place within the permit. And Marcus is marking off those measurements on that dock there. They're treating this dock just like a framing square. So each mark is another spot to place a reef ball. You have seen the side scan sonar from the last time this was done in early 2021. You'll see it was a perfect grid of 100 reef balls. 12 were added later, and then oyster spattle and shell was added later. And that's right here at this marker buoy. This marker buoy is a fixture here. You will find it and be able to fish around it. So about 112 in the water already, about 175 going in today.
So if you don't want to do math today, you'll stay on the link because Mr. Sikorsky will go forever on this question. Someone wants to know what impact the reef would have on fishing.
So what we say is habitat today equals fish tomorrow. A reef is the base of the ecosystem, can support all sorts of different animals like the filtering organisms I've been talking about and the smaller fish we may classify as bait. But there's many, many different animals that hang out around here. And then depending on the age of the fish, the location, the time of year, you're going to have different sizes of fish here, either feeding, maybe hiding, crabs as well. And so ultimately what it does is creates a place to create these animals, because if a young animal can live inside this reef ball and survive, well, that's one more animal that's living in this river. And the ecosystem needs diversity, needs a lot of abundance of all these different animals to make the bay healthy and make a bay balanced the way we want it. So ultimately, fish enjoy structure. That's what we would call this, habitat. But remember that habitat is everything from the top of the water to the bottom of the water, and even down into the sand and mud. All these pieces being healthy, having oxygen is extremely important. Without water quality, you really don't have actual habitat for fish, because fish breathe the oxygen in the water. So ultimately, when these reefs can filter a lot of water, they're taking out algae. There's too much algae in the bay right now because of us, because of nutrients fueling that algae. It is a plant. It makes the water green or brown. It can also, as it dies, takes away oxygen. And so fish can swim away from that, thankfully, if they can find suitable habitat in other portions of the bay. And they will do that. They will migrate throughout the year to different parts of the bay, to different conditions. And they do that differently in different parts of their life. A rockfish, our state fish, its scientific name is actually Morone saxatilis. Saxatilis means of or around rocks. That's part of the reason we call it a rockfish. Also, you have oyster rocks. That's a traditional name that watermen and folks in Maryland will call an oyster reef, an oyster rock. So ultimately the rockfish are going to live near these habitats because they feed there. They can find shelter if they're small. And most importantly, what an oyster can do is it eats that algae, this time of year especially. We need clear water. Temperature will make the algae bloom more, and that'll happen in the summer. But what we need is clear water, because clear water allows the sun to penetrate and help grasses germinate or grasses grow. Underwater grasses, something we call SAV or submerged aquatic vegetation, is so important to the ecosystem. We need a good balance of reefs and oysters and grasses nearby each other so all the different animals can live there and be successful. Our blue crab population here in the bay winters in the mud, comes out of the mud, spawns. We need the little crabs to find grass for shelter. Little fish need grass for shelter. Many folks don't realize that we actually have seahorses living in those grasses in certain parts of the bay. So we explain that oysters are the foundation of the ecosystem here, and that's oversimplifying it. In every part of the bay, there's a slightly different mix of animals because of the available habitat. And remember, that includes water quality, which could be clarity or what's in it from a toxin perspective. Also, you have, I lost my train of thought. You also have temperature and salinity. So that's another part. That's what I was thinking.
Yeah, but all it is just falling.
The depth of water, this is about 14 feet of water. And so, of course, the tide comes in and out. We don't have a major tide swing here in this river, maybe 1.5 feet at most. The depth will vary a little bit, but we're right at about 14 right now. And the permit designates how close to the surface of the water the reef ball structure can be. We obviously do not want vessels striking these. And this is all certified by the Corps of Engineers, Maryland Department of the Environment, Maryland DNR, and other agencies on a federal and state level that work together to make sure that the use of this public area, this public waterway, is consistent with other uses and the overall goals of the Chesapeake Bay. That's why reef balls are such an important design. They are specifically designed to be a proper artificial reef to provide the maximum ecological benefit with no negative impact. There's stories of reef balls. Oh, there goes a drone. There's stories of reef balls surviving Category 4 hurricanes, protecting beaches throughout the Caribbean, doing amazing work throughout Asia, Africa. The team at the Reef Ball Foundation continues to just amaze me and amaze folks and partners around the world. So definitely check them out and support them as well. We couldn't do this work without them. Our program was jump-started thanks to a foundation that had helped support the purchase of these reef balls with Stevenson University. Stevenson was no longer using some of the equipment, and so we adopted it. And since, through our fundraising, we have a total of 40 of the low-profile size molds, about 28 of the mini bay, and 20 of these small oyster balls. So again, we try and work with as many schools as possible. We never charge a school a penny. That's why we do our fundraising, why we have so much great support and so many great partners. We will work with all 1,250 Calvert County fifth graders this year. We did last year as well. We have 6 schools left there. Brian will personally lead 8 elementary schools in Carroll County this year and has done that since 2014. Again, Mike Campanelli at the Carroll County Career and Tech Center in Westminster. He's a masonry instructor, was an integral part of this program starting and to this day continuing to build reef balls and work to get material donated and the logistics worked out. So thank you to the great team at Carroll County Public Schools across the board and our great partners here in Arundel County. And remember, this is Noah's Reef. Dobbins Island is a popular place in the summertime. Come out here, raft up, enjoy this beautiful river. So the Magothy, check it out on a map, has a really narrow mouth. There it is right there. Gibson Island on the left. And the Bay Bridge, we can't quite see it, but it's over these trees here to head over to the eastern shore. The far land you can see across the bay there is Kent Island.
That's fine.
All right, everyone. Thank you so much for coming out. This was our 9:30 live stream. We will be back with an 11:15 covering very similar information and checking out our progress. So please share this if you were able to follow along, share it with your friends, get involved with CCA. You can see at the bottom, you are watching our Living Reef Action Campaign at work. You can join us. We are a membership organization. And every penny we raise here in Maryland stays here in Maryland to go to projects like this, working with great partners. I'm honored to be able to lead the troops at CCA Maryland, our volunteer team, and work with so many great partners. We couldn't do it without the hardworking fourth graders, fifth graders, teachers, you name it. Just like this beautiful ecosystem of the Chesapeake Bay is so diverse and requires all parts to be working, so do we to do this great work. So join us. Let's get involved. And I'll see you all at 11:15.